Section 7 represents a significant shift in our analysis of ocean import operating models because now we're going to be talking about buyer's consolidation. FCL and LCL are very important models. Buyer's consol is a complex environment that requires a lot of inputs, operational understanding, and technology to facilitate the many advantages inherent to buyer's consolidation. Let's not waste any time and get right down to work. As we know, buyer's consolidation programs were mentioned a number of times during Module 6 on ocean transportation, so it shouldn't be any big surprise. In this section, we'll be conducting a deeper analysis of what is also known as buyer's consol. Here's what's really important, and we want to focus on this in a considerable fashion because it changes the way we think about ocean import transportation and how we can integrate ocean transportation with other facets of our inbound supply chain. Buyer's consol is not just a logistical operation. It is an exercise in dynamic inventory management. This is something that we've said before, too. For a sub-bullet, buyer's consol requires advanced planning down to the purchase order and item level. We need that visibility. And to get the visibility, buyer's consol relies on technology to execute on the model. Let's begin this slide by saying that buyer's consolidation, the consolidation of cargo, begins at origin and an origin CFS. Buyer's consol is an origin-oriented consolidation activity. With that said, in most instances, importers employ a buyer's consol model when they operate more than one distribution point in the U.S. and want to send specific quantities of individual items to those destinations. That's a pretty significant point to make as well. Buyer's consol, by its very definition, can be used to fill ocean containers at origin with merchandise from multiple vendors and send them as full containers to a DC in Dallas, to a DC in San Bernardino, to a DC in Mechanicsburg. Second bullet, the key characteristic of buyer's consol is that goods are sent to an origin CFS by multiple vendors and then assigned to ocean containers by destination. That is essentially what we just said. Let's use the second bullet as an important reiteration of that point. Last bullet. Fundamental to the entire program, the importer must provide explicit instructions to the CFS operator at origin on how to load containers. There can't be any guesswork with buyer's consol. The importer has to electronically communicate stuffing instructions on a per container basis to the CFS operator, which oftentimes is the ocean freight forwarder providing the main mode of transport. Sub-bullet in that last bullet, basically we're talking about what quantities of specific products are to be shipped in containers bound to separate destinations in the U.S. As a quick sidebar, the image we see in the right, these gentlemen are loading a container, stuffing a container at origin. You'll note that it's floor loaded all the way up to the ceiling, and that although there are pallets in the image, the cargo in the container isn't palletized. It's just a clever way of gaining some height for the individual stuffing the container. This is a CFS operation at origin and indicative of the type of human activities that go on in running, in this case, a buyer's consol. Needless to say, buyer's consol programs require constant communication between vendors, the origin forwarder / CFS, and the importer. The importer is the one sending the instructions on how to load containers on a vendor-specific, PO-specific, and item-specific level. Ideally, as we see in our second bullet, effective buyer's consol programs begin with the electronic transmission of purchase orders to vendors via a cloud-based SaaS import management software system. There's no doubt that U.S. importers are still sending POs via email, via fax, via spreadsheet, and that will likely go on for some time. In today's world, the ability to use a trade platform where vendors, as we see in our last bullet, have permission-based access to purchase orders that they can download, it's much more effective. It just works better. There's really no argument about that. Once a vendor can download POs, they go into their build-to-order model, as we've talked about many times. As POs go into production and production is completed, under a buyer's console model, the vendor sends merchandise to a CFS, and simultaneous to that, the U.S. importer is sending instructions on how to load individual containers carrying these purchase orders. Without a doubt, the origin forwarder CFS operator needs visibility into outstanding POs and their status. That forwarder, as we've said a bunch of times as well, can be the liaison between the U.S. importer and the vendors, getting status updates on purchase orders, when goods are going to be ready, in what quantity, is a PO going to come in complete. That's part of the role that the origin forwarder can play. As goods linked to specific POs arrive at an origin CFS, the operator has to have the instructions on how to allocate the merchandise. A big giant PO with 50,000 units of a specific item on it show up at a CFS, bound to, using our previous example, a DC in San Bernardino, California, Dallas, Texas, and Mechanicsburg, PA. That purchase order is big enough to split up amongst those 3 DCs, but the CFS operator has to know how exactly to split them up. That's what buyer's consolidation is. A quick note, upcoming slides provide a detailed visual portrayal of CFS service offerings, each party's responsibilities, as well as charges associated with operating out of a CFS. We won't see that in this section. It's actually the next section, which only has 2 slides in it, but will be a very detailed conversation, a very visual conversation. Some of the better slides that we've offered up, to be perfectly honest. Summarizing some of what we've already said, buyer's consolidation works well when an importer buys in large quantities from different vendors and ships to multiple regional DCs. This type of program is also ideal for what we have called vendor clusters, where there are many shippers in a concentrated geographic region. And the original concentrated geographic region for importing into the U.S. was South China, Guangdong province, basically, where vendors can send material into a number of ocean ports. Nansha on the western side of the Pearl River Delta in South China, Yantian on the eastern side. We studied that in Module 6 as well, and clearly U.S. importers have to determine where are their geographic clusters in any part of the world, not just South China, and what ports of loading are they going to use to have their CFS located in close proximity to that port. Trade tip, not only does PO management require a SaaS-based model, the entire buyer's consult process works best when empowered by a software-as-a-service-based import management program. A trading platform, an electronic trading platform that all parties have permission-based access to and allows them to execute on their operational responsibilities. Here's the last slide in this section, and a very interesting historical perspective entitled The Story Behind Buyer's Consol. Since the invention of the ocean container by Malcolm McLean in 1956, there have been a number of innovations that have accelerated the growth of global maritime trade. Perhaps the greatest of these operational enhancements is that of the buyer's consolidation model, which, by no coincidence, was created by the steamship line founded by Mr. McLean, Sealand. We'll recall the supply chain perspective on the history of the ocean container and its invention by Malcolm McLean in 1956. Well, Mr. McLean went on to found a steamship line called Sealand, and they came up with the innovation for buyer's consol. Second paragraph. Buyer's consol can be traced back to 1971, when the then largest retailer in the world, Sears, approached Sealand about the possibility of providing services in addition to ocean transportation out of South China. The birth of value-added services in the ocean transportation business. Basically, the buyers at Sears' purchasing department in Chicago, where Sears is headquartered, needed a way to combine cargo from multiple suppliers and send containers directly to regional DCs. the management of Sealand founded a separate division and named it Buyers and Shippers Enterprise. It wasn't long before the name was shortened and genericized to Buyers Consolidation. Shortly after Sealand's innovation, other steamship lines like American President Lines, OOCL, and Maersk began to offer similar services. That being the birth of steamship lines offering 3PL services. In spite of the different names they gave these businesses, the term Buyers Consol continues to prevail in the marketplace. Today, there are hundreds of 3PLs, if not thousands, around the world that offer a service that is very similar to the original one developed at Sealand. Just a little historical perspective, but certainly very interesting, that allows one to see that many of the innovations in global trade have been pushed and forced along by the customers, the BCOs, the importers. That will wrap up this section. When we come back, we have 2 slides in the next section, purely visual, allowing a comprehensive portrayal of who does what and how a buyer's consolidation really works.